Hey there, and welcome back to 31 Days of Horror. We are on day 5, and we checked out the movie Imaginary today. The all I ever really knew about it was just little snippets of advertising that I saw on some streaming autoplays and things like that. I hadn't really heard anything beyond that. When talking to other people about the movie, nobody I knew had seen it. Everybody had kind of had it looks like it could be good. I don't know. Kind of had the PG-13 horror vibes. And, but I decided to check it out anyway because 31 Days of Horror is not entertaining if we don't get some bad movies in there or movies that I just didn't like or something like that. You know, you have to have variety. And I have to say that it exceeded any expectations I had of it. It was actually an enjoyable movie. I think it had some decent creep moments. I think it used its casting well. I think the pacing was great in it, and overall it was an entertaining story. I think it has a lot of potential to become more popular over time, because I think it does have a great concept, and I do think it has rewatchability. It has some cool scare moments, little ones, but I think it's a lot closer to more of like the Insidious series or kind of the Conjuring series, where it doesn't have to be that, R-rated, full of all of the typical like violent trope kind of things, to be successful and to have, some scare factors or some surprise factors. Was it a little bit predictable? Yes. But there's only so many stories you can tell, and at some point a movie's just going to be predictable by the sheer nature of that. Did it take away from any of the enjoyability or watchability of the movie? No, it didn't. The premise, as described, is a woman finds out that her stepdaughter's imaginary friend might be something more than that, and her own childhood memories are like the key to figuring that out. I think it's a cool concept for a movie. I think we've seen different franchises, different films deal with the kind of imaginary friend aspect. We've seen it in TV shows. It kind of the presentation of how they did things, and the kind of like introductions of things remind me a little bit of the imaginary friend episode of Supernatural. It was also just referenced in a Supernatural kids book that I was reading for spooky season, and so it had that vibe, but also, I mean, you can't have an imaginary friend or a live doll type concept if you don't reference Child's Play, obviously. I mean, Chucky is the face of, a kid's exaggerating when they say their friend, said this. And I really liked the way that they decided to present this movie. I liked the way that they let trauma be part of it without trauma being the ultimate, villain. I like that they allowed for some realistic step situation, issues with bonding. I've seen in other movies, especially horror, where they kind of overdo it with the kid hates their step parent kind of thing. And I think, despite the fact that there's an angry teenager involved, I think this movie did a good job of portraying a realistic struggle there, where, you know, they're not trying to take over for, you know, the biological parent, but they are trying to be supportive. They do want to be a part of the kids' lives, and kids, you know, struggling with a big change, especially in the parental area, or not knowing how to navigate that. And a lot of movies like to, you know, put it to the extreme, or, you know, make the kid be like an absolute villain, you know, to a parent. And this movie didn't do that. So it was a really, you know, when you had moments of redemption and things, you know, in the movie that you look for with the relationships between, you know, parental units and things in horror, I think they're more meaningful, because they're not, you know, going from, your daughter doesn't respect me, to all of a sudden, like, you're my best friend, in the course of an hour and a half, 2 hour movie. I definitely think that this is worth it, especially if you're not super into the horror genre, because I know there are a ton of people who just love to watch spooky movies and things during the Halloween season, but they're not into, you know, slasher movies. They're not into, you know, movies where there's what's the kill count. They want to be they want to feel the fall vibes, maybe have some jump scares so they can snuggle up with somebody, or, you know, be a little afraid but not be, you know, terrified to sleep that night. And I think that's why people gravitate to movies a lot like, you know, Hocus Pocus and Halloween Town, and because you get those fall vibes. But I think a lot of us sometimes want to watch things that are a little more horrorful. Or you're with a bigger crowd where there's more diverse opinions on things. I think this is a really happy medium movie. You know, there's a little bit of violence, there are some scares, and it does, you know, kind of deal with relationships. It doesn't push anything, you know, too far. Language is at the minimum, because I don't know about you, but sometimes, very rarely, sometimes the swearing in horror movies gets to be a little exhausting, only because at some point it's just mostly swearing and not really dialogue, and it's kind of like, well, I could just do without. But this didn't, obviously, for ratings reasons. The language was at the minimum, and I think that also leads to a little bit more realistic talk sometimes when you're writing dialogue. Sometimes it also leads to some odd dialogue, though, and you will find instances of that, and you will find pretty big instances of exposition, of one character telling another character like the entire backstory that's then gonna, you know, tie it all together. That is a thing in this movie. Is it terrible? No. Are any of the characters awful or, you know, annoying? Not really. Some of them are a bit superfluous. Like, the only reason that they're there is simply to deliver exposition, and then they're, you know, they're disposable. It's exit stage left, never to be seen again. And that's a little disappointing. And was it a bit predictable? If you watch movies in the genre a lot, of course it is. But like I said earlier, there's only so many stories you can tell. And especially when you're looking at things that scare people, there's only so many ways you can tell the same trajectory of story, you know. If it's living dolls, puppets, imaginary friends, things that people in general wouldn't necessarily believe would exist, and things that could easily be excused as just kids being kids, or kids imagining things. There's only so many stories you can tell that way, especially since we're now so far in the future, so far removed from when you had those, you know, original movies like Child's Play, that at this point you kind of have to go, well, logic would say people now, if they heard like there's a doll coming to life and then there's mysteriously people dying, Our generation would probably be the one like, yeah, we've seen a lot of weird stuff going on. Of course, my kid's doll is alive and killing people. Like, of course. That's just the next thing. And then there's, news stories about recalls on toys and whatnot. And then there's somebody figuring out a capitalist way to save the world from the killer toys. There's a new story idea for you, I guess. But there's only so many stories you can tell with, when you have to kind of change things to update them to make them make sense in the current world. And I think imaginary friends are kind of a cool way to do that, because then you don't really have to worry about updating much. You don't have to try to figure out why are kids into a good guy style doll anymore, or how much would a company charge for something like that now? I don't know anybody who could probably afford to even think about a good guy doll in this economy. Anyway, if you're looking for something that's just an ease in to horror, it's kind of a fun thing, but it's on the horror side of Halloween Town, we'll say, as far as the non-R-rated horrors go. So just bear in mind, there are some scares. Bear in mind. Unintended. But I definitely, I think you should check it out. That being said, I think I probably give it 3 stars, 3.5 stars. It's entertaining. And I don't think you would be necessarily disappointed that you watched it. But I don't necessarily think it has much watchability other than maybe once, as a novelty. So, but I'd love to hear what you think if you want to put it down in the comments, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.